starts.
All right, black and white sports reporters. Well, I got to tell you, after hearing these comments from Paige Bueckers, makes me feel like the WNBA and the players may be headed towards some kind of lockout / strike. I thought there would be some optimism. I mean, the owners have offered 4 times the amount of salary that they were previously making. You got the Supermax contracts, a raise in salary cap, a bigger revenue share, and it sounds like none of it is going to be good.
That's not optimism. That's a man watching a train wreck in slow motion. And what he just described should terrify every WNBA fan right now. Because while you were celebrating record attendance and new media deals, the players and owners have been locked in negotiations that are falling apart fast. The deadline was October 31st. They missed it. Then November 30th, missed that too. Now we're looking at January 9th. And Paige Bueckers just told the Dallas Morning News that these deadlines will probably keep getting extended. Translation: nobody's backing down. And the 2026 season is now in legitimate jeopardy.
The initial deadline for a ratified CBA was on October 31. Once it became clear that this deadline would not be reached, the deadline was extended to November 30th. While there is some seemingly optimistic reports about the most recent CBA proposals the league had offered the players, the two sides didn't come to a deal before that November 30 deadline. As a result, a third deadline of January 9 has been agreed to. A few major problems will arise if a ratified CBA is not agreed upon by January 9th. For one, the league is already behind schedule given the Golden State Valkyries expansion draft took place on December 6, 2024. Of course, it is currently December 9th, 2025. There are 2 expansion teams, the Tempo and the Portland Fire, who need their respective expansion drafts, and there are not being a CBA in place means this can't occur.
Here's what makes this crisis so absurd. The league just offered players 4 times their previous salaries, Supermax contracts, bigger revenue share, a complete restructuring of compensation that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. And according to reports, none of it is good enough. But those deadlines he mentioned, they're not arbitrary. The Golden State Valkyries held their expansion draft on December 6, 2024. That's over a year ago now. 2 more expansion teams are waiting, the Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo. They can't hold their drafts without a ratified CBA. Free agency typically starts in early February. That's 6 weeks away. No CBA means no free agency. No free agency means no roster construction. No rosters means no season. The dominoes are lined up. And Paige Bueckers just confirmed they're about to fall.
Quote, "We can do things off the court. We can bring more visibility and eyes," Bueckers said. Quote, "We're in the national media, on commercials, and do large sponsorship deals with brands like Nike, Gatorade, and stuff that has national, even global visibility. We're more than just WNBA players, and I think we want to get compensated as such," Bueckers said, referring to the players' efforts for increased salaries as part of a new CBA. That's great, but who the hell's going to see Nike and Gatorade ads if there's no games to show them during? I mean, jeez. And look, let's be real. There's one player that can draw eyes. I mean, away from maybe 2. I mean, at this point, Paige will throw Sophie in there. She was the most Googled women's athlete in the country. But it's Caitlin Clark, and everybody knows it.
Now let's talk about what Bueckers actually said to the Dallas Morning News on December 9th. Quote, "We can do things off the court. We can bring more visibility and eyes. We're in the national media, on commercials, doing large sponsorship deals with brands like Nike and Gatorade that has national, even global visibility. We're more than just WNBA players, and I think we want to get compensated as such." That sounds reasonable on the surface. These players do have massive off-court value. They are building brands. But here's the problem with that argument. Who's going to see those Nike and Gatorade commercials? If there are no games to show them during, sponsorship value is directly tied to platform visibility. You know what kills platform visibility? A lockout. And there's a bigger issue lurking beneath that statement. When Bueckers says we're more than just WNBA players, she's technically correct. But the leverage in these negotiations doesn't come from Paige Bueckers' Instagram following. It doesn't come from Breanna Stewart's Nike deal. The leverage comes from one person, and everybody in that negotiating room knows it.
And I'm sure the owners are sitting back, and they are fully lucid and aware of that. Now, the NBA owners, the NBA commissioner, some of the WNBA leadership, sometimes I'm not there. I don't know that they actually understand that or appreciate that. I wonder. I mean, because they're part of the clique that didn't want her in the league to begin with. There's things as WNBA players and the WNBA, the NBPA, that we're standing firm on. I think that's why the extensions are happening and the conversations are continuing to keep going past the deadlines. These deadlines will probably continue to keep getting extended. So she's telling you, like, that next deadline, they may not meet it.
Caitlin Clark. That's the leverage. That's the entire foundation of these new media deals worth $260 million per year, up from $60 million. That's why attendance exploded. That's why merchandise sales went through the roof. And that's why this negotiating position is so incredibly fragile. When Clark got injured and missed significant time, the ratings didn't dip by 5 or 6% like some outlets tried to spin. Time magazine can publish all the creative statistics they want about growth metrics and year-over-year improvements. The actual viewership data told a different story. When fans found out Clark would be absent long-term, ratings dropped 51%. Not 5, 51. Ticket prices that were selling for $100 a seat during Clark's games, $4, $5, $8 when she wasn't playing. The market spoke clearly. The owners saw those numbers, and now they're sitting across the negotiating table from players demanding compensation based on visibility that one injured player could eliminate overnight.
Bueckers doesn't sound optimistic about how the negotiations are going thus far, where they might be headed in the future. Wow. I mean, all this momentum, and look, they started losing momentum when Caitlin Clark got hurt. Much to the chagrin of Time magazine. Oh, 5% up, 6% up. No, there's just a new way of judging the ratings now. That's all. When we found out Caitlin Clark was absent and gonna stay absent, 51%, boom, gone. Viewership. All of a sudden, these ticket prices that were $100 a seat, $4 a seat, $5 a seat, $8 a seat. You know, I mean, the owners have to be sitting back going, we've never had a profit. We have never had a profit.
And here's where the math gets really uncomfortable for the player's position. The WNBA has never turned a profit, not once in its 28-year history. Last year, the New York Post reported the league lost $40 million, and we haven't seen a similar report for 2024. And that silence is telling. If the league turned a profit in 2024 with all that Caitlin Clark momentum, you'd see that report plastered everywhere. The league would be shouting it from the rooftops. The players' union would be citing it in every negotiation. The fact that we're not seeing those numbers suggests one of two things. Either the league still lost money despite record attendance, or they made such a marginal profit that publicizing it would undermine the players' negotiating position. Think about what that means. The most successful season in WNBA history, driven by the biggest star the league has ever seen, and they still might not have turned a profit. Now the players are rejecting a deal that would quadruple their salaries before the league has demonstrated it can consistently make money.
I still believe it's very odd we don't have the profit report, that splash report that came out like last year from the New York Post that said the WNBA lost $40 million in 2024. We've yet to see that. I believe that's calculated. And I'm sure the players union probably doesn't want that report to come out. If they still did not turn a profit, the players union don't want that out, because then that makes them look terrible for not taking the 4 times the salary increase. Wow. They are legitimately going to take this momentum that they've got and riding in the car, and they're going to ride that car right into a brick wall, right into a bridge embankment. Take your money.
The new media rights deal changes the financial picture significantly. Going from $60 million to $260 million annually in TV money creates a path to profitability that didn't exist before. But let's be realistic about what that profitability looks like in the early years. If the league was losing $40 million annually and just added $200 million in new TV revenue, you're not looking at $200 million in profit. You're looking at maybe 10, 20, possibly $30 million in profit after accounting for expansion costs, increased salaries, and operational expenses for 2 new teams. That's not nothing. That's real money. But it's not pay everyone like NBA players money. And this is where the strategy becomes baffling. The players have momentum. They have leverage. They have a once-in-a-generation star driving unprecedented interest. The smart play is to take the massive salary increase, lock in the improved revenue share, and come back to the table in 2 or 3 years when the league has demonstrated sustained profitability. Instead, they're holding out for demands that could kill the golden goose before it lays a single egg.
Start making some money, and then renegotiate. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, look, the league is going to start making... I do see comments where people are like, well, the league's not going to make a profit anyway. No, provided these players don't get too greedy, they will make a profit now because of the new media rights deal. All right, when you're going from, $60 million a year to $260 million a year for TV, you're going to start getting a profit. But how much of a profit? 10 million? Well, that's not a lot. 20 million? I wouldn't exactly call that, until you start seeing 100 or 200 or 300 million in profit. I mean, honestly, be realistic. Tell me what you think. Wow. All right. We didn't get to see Caitlin Clark.
Listen to what he said about momentum. All this momentum that Caitlin Clark built, and they're going to blow it. Those aren't the words of someone exaggerating for effect. Those are the words of someone who's watched the WNBA shoot itself in the foot repeatedly over 28 years and sees it happening again. The league finally breaks through, finally gets mainstream attention, finally has networks fighting for broadcast rights, finally has sold out arenas and merchandise flying off shelves. And the response is to risk all of it over contract demands that the financial fundamentals can't support yet. Paige Bueckers said these deadlines will probably continue to keep getting extended. That's not a negotiating tactic. That's an admission that both sides are dug in with no clear path to resolution, and every day that passes without a CBA makes the 2026 season less viable. Here's what makes this situation so uniquely frustrating. The owners aren't asking the players to take a pay cut. They're not asking them to accept the status quo. They're offering 4 times the previous salary structure. They're offering supermax contracts that would make top players millionaires from WNBA's salary alone, not counting endorsements. They're offering a bigger piece of the revenue pie. And the players are saying it's not enough. Now, there are legitimate issues from the players' perspective. They've been underpaid for decades relative to the value they provide. They've watched NBA players make 100 times what they make while playing the same sport. They've dealt with substandard travel conditions, inadequate facilities, and a league office that seemed indifferent to their concerns. Those grievances are real and valid. But there's a difference between what's fair in an abstract sense and what's financially sustainable right now. The WNBA isn't the NBA. It doesn't have 50 years of accumulated wealth and infrastructure. It doesn't have a proven track record of profitability. It has one incredible season driven primarily by one player, and a new TV deal that might finally make the business model work. The path forward should be obvious. Take the quadrupled salaries, lock in the improved revenue share, prove the business model works without Caitlin Clark as a crutch, then come back in 2 or 3 years with demonstrated profitability, and negotiate from an even stronger position. You'd have multiple years of financial data showing the league makes money. You'd have expanded fan bases in Portland and Toronto. You'd have established that the 2024 surge wasn't a fluke. Instead, the players are gambling that the owners will blink first. They're betting that the networks won't walk away from their $260 million annual commitment if there's no 2026 season. They're assuming that fan interest will survive a lockout and come back just as strong when games resume. Those are incredibly risky assumptions. Think about what the owners are calculating right now. They're looking at a league that's never made money. They're looking at TV deals that assume Caitlin Clark stays healthy and remains the face of the league. They're looking at expansion teams that need rosters and can't wait indefinitely. They're looking at free agency that should start in 6 weeks. And they're looking at players who rejected a deal that would have made them the highest paid women's professional athletes in team sports. At some point, the owners have to wonder if this is sustainable. Not just financially, but operationally. If the players won't accept a deal that quadruples their money when the league still hasn't proven it can turn a profit, what happens when the league does make money? Do the demands quadruple again? Does every negotiation become a crisis? The media rights partners are watching this too. Amazon, ESPN, and the other networks didn't pay $260 million per year for a league that might not play. They paid for a specific product with specific ratings expectations. If those expectations aren't met because there's no season, there are clauses in those contracts. There are performance guarantees and advertising make goods. The league would have to compensate the networks for failing to deliver the product they paid for. That compensation could easily wipe out multiple years of the increased TV revenue. And here's the part that should terrify WNBA fans. The networks have options. If the 2026 season gets canceled or significantly delayed, those networks can pivot their programming. They can fill those time slots with other content. They can invest in other women's sports properties. And once they do that, once they've built new programming around the WNBA's absence, they might decide they don't need the WNBA anymore. That's not speculation. That's how media rights work. You get one chance to deliver on the promise. If you fail, the next negotiation reflects that failure. Paige Bueckers is right about one thing. These players do have value beyond just being WNBA players. But that value is symbiotic with the league's success. Nike doesn't sign WNBA players to massive deals because they're great at basketball in a vacuum. They sign them because they're great at basketball in a league that people watch. Gatorade doesn't sponsor athletes who play an empty gym. The off-court value that Bueckers cited is directly dependent on the on-court platform remaining viable. A lockout threatens that entire ecosystem. The 2026 season is now 6 months away. Training camp should be starting in April. Free agency should be happening in February. Expansion drafts for Portland and Toronto should have happened already. Every day without a CBA pushes those timelines further back and makes the logistics more complicated. And for what? What's the endgame here? The players hold out, force the owners to meet demands the finances can't support. And then what? The league operates at a loss again, the owners decide this isn't worth it, and fold teams? The media partners invoke their performance clauses and reduce future payment. There's no scenario where this ends well if both sides stay dug in. The smart money says they eventually reach a deal. The stakes are too high and both sides have too much to lose. But the fact that we're even at this point, that deadlines keep getting extended with no resolution in sight, that Paige Bueckers is openly saying more extensions are coming, tells you how far apart they really are. This isn't a negotiation over minor detail. This is a fundamental disagreement about what the league can afford, and what the players deserve. And those gaps don't close easily. So where does this leave fans? Hoping that cooler heads prevail. Hoping that someone in that room recognizes the opportunity they're about to waste. Hoping that the momentum Caitlin Clark built doesn't evaporate while players and owners argue over money. The league hasn't proven it can generate consistently. Because if this goes wrong, if the 2026 season gets canceled or significantly delayed, the WNBA might not get another chance like this. The networks will be gun-shy. The fans will be disillusioned. The sponsors will look elsewhere. And all that progress, all that growth, all that momentum will be gone. And it will be the most WNBA thing ever to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. What do you think happens here? Do the players back down and take the deal? Do the owners cave to the demands? Or are we actually headed for a lockout that kills the league's best chance at sustainability? Drop your prediction in the comments because this is about to get very real very fast.